It was close to midnight when the call came into dispatch. A man's voice trembled on the line. "I'm at the old relay turnoff, mile 147. The beacon light is on. Someone's on the catwalk." The dispatcher froze. That site had been decommissioned more than 20 years ago. No power, no equipment, yet through the static came the faint click of a radio mic, and another voice that wasn't the caller's. "Copy, 1247. The line went dead. The relay tower stood on a lonely ridge in the Pacific Northwest, surrounded by endless forest. Built in the 70s, it carried weather data and law enforcement signals. For years before fiber lines replaced it, power was cut, the site abandoned. But hunters, hikers, and road crews sometimes reported seeing the red beacon glow in the fog. Officially, there was no way it could happen. Evan, a telecom technician, was sent up one March afternoon to secure a storm-damaged panel. He expected silence and rust. Instead, he saw the beacon pulsing steadily through the mist. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. The padlock on the gate was stiff but unbroken. Inside the locker at the top, he found something strange. A plastic bag holding an old logbook. The pages carried neat pencil entries from the 1990s, routine checks, channel tests. Then came gaps, followed by newer scrawls pressed hard into the paper, as if written by someone anxious. One line repeated, "Do not key the mic at 1247. Evan thought it was a prank. Then he heard it, the metallic clink of a boot on the catwalk just outside. He rushed out, but no one was there. Only frost on the rail, as though touched moments before. He returned the next evening with testing tools. The tower had no mains, no generator, no solar. Still, his voltage wand chirped near the conduit. The steel hummed with a low vibration that rattled his teeth. His recorder caught a sequence of tones like distant radio beacons. Then came the click of a microphone and a whisper of static. 1247. The same week, a hiker went missing on a trail below the tower. Search and rescue combed the area. Radios crackled with a beacon ID. None of them had program. At 11:45 p.m., volunteers saw the tower's red light glowing like a heartbeat. They reached the structure with a K9, who froze and cowered, staring up at the catwalk. Maris, one of the rescuers, remembers the moment. There were footsteps above us, heavy, deliberate. Our radios squealed, then a voice said, "Do not key back at 1247. We checked our watches. It was 1246. They shut their devices off and retreated. Minutes later, the missing hiker was found wandering miles away on a logging road, dazed and confused, asking if anyone else had heard it pick up. This is the terrifying mystery of the haunted radio tower. In the dead of night, dispatch workers received a series of strange calls from an abandoned radio tower. At first, it was just static. Then they heard voices. Voices of truckers and drivers who had witnessed something strange on the tower. Some saw shadowy figures walking on the catwalk. Others saw mysterious lights in the windows. And as they drove past, their car radios would emit a loud "copy." Determined to get to the bottom of this, Evan returned to the tower in the dead of winter. He set up a recording device and waited. At 12:47, the logbook warned not to answer. And as soon as he did, the lights of the tower turned on. Static filled the air and a ghostly voice said, "Copy 1247. As he ran away, the static followed him. And as he looked back, he saw a mysterious figure on the catwalk that vanished like twisted steel. The tower was demolished, but drivers still report seeing the phantom lights and hearing the static at 12:47. If you give it attention, it follows you. The Fire Island Lighthouse stands tall on the southern edge of Long Island, New York. Built in the 1850s, its white and black stripes once guided ships safely into New York Harbor. But long after automation replaced its keepers, people claim the light has never truly gone out. Visitors speak of footsteps on the spiral staircase, doors slamming without wind, and the faint sound of someone pacing in the lantern chamber. This is the story of one ranger's overnight watch. Michael had worked for the National Park Service for nearly 10 years. He knew the Fire Island seashore better than most, its boardwalks, dunes, and the endless cry of gulls above the surf. The lighthouse was part of his assignment, though he rarely stayed there after dark. That changed one winter when the island was quiet, ferries reduced, and visitors almost gone. Renovation crews had left equipment behind, and Michael volunteered to watch the building overnight. He thought it would be peaceful. One long evening with his thermos of coffee and a book. The night began calm. The ocean beyond was a steady roar, muffled through the lighthouse walls. At 9:08 p.m., he walked the spiral stairs just to check for drafts. The iron steps groaned under his boots. He ran a hand along the rail, the cool metal slick with years of wear. At the top, he stepped into the lantern chamber. The beacon was long retired, but its glass still caught moonlight and scattered faint silver shards across the room. He stood for a while, listening. Nothing but the ocean and the creak of the structure settling. He felt foolish for even expecting anything else. By 10:30, he was back in the keeper's office downstairs, jotting notes. That's when he heard the first sound. Boot steps, slow, deliberate, heavy on the stairs. Michael froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. The building was locked, and the nearest ranger station was miles away across the bay. He stepped out into the stairwell and called up, "Hello? Who's there?" The footsteps paused. The silence that followed pressed down like a weight. He climbed halfway up, flashlight beam cutting across the ironwork. Nothing. He returned to his desk, trying to laugh it off. Old buildings made noises, especially at night. But a few minutes later, the steps resumed. This time, faster, ascending the staircase as though someone was hurrying toward the top. Michael raced upward, breath echoing in the hollow shaft. When he reached the lantern room, the doors slammed shut in his face so hard, the glass rattled in its frame. He yanked it open. The room was empty, bathed in moonlight. The air, though, was different, sharp with the faint smell of oil and smoke, the way old lamps used to burn. He thought of the keepers who had lived here generations ago, trimming wicks, polishing glass, never leaving their post. Michael backed down carefully, heart pounding. At midnight, it happened again. The boots, the pacing, up and down the spiral. Sometimes it was above him, sometimes below. Once, when he leaned over the rail, he swore he saw a figure 2 flights down, tall in an old coat, before it vanished into shadow. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat at the bottom of the stairs with his lantern lit, notebook open, recording every sound. At 2:17 a.m., he felt the floor tremble. The lantern chamber door banged shut again, though there was no wind. And above, in the glass, a reflection moved across the beacon. It wasn't his. For just a moment he saw a man bending over, polishing glass that no longer turned, his face tired but determined. The reflection straightened as though noticing him, and the light scattered across the chamber like a flash. Then it was gone. When dawn finally broke, Michael packed his things and left without a word. He didn't file an official report. He told only a few close colleagues, who nodded knowingly. Several had heard the same boots, the same pacing on other nights. None of them liked staying after dark. The Fire Island Lighthouse remains a landmark. Its lantern chamber open to visitors by day, but the keeper's duties, it seems, never ended. Some still believe that on certain nights, if you stand by the spiral staircase and wait long enough, you'll hear the old watch resuming, iron boots on iron steps, climbing higher and higher. And if you dare to enter the lantern room at the wrong moment, you might catch a reflection that doesn't belong to you. A keeper still watching, making sure the light never dies. It was close to midnight on the Queen Mary, docked silently in Long Beach Harbor. The ship no longer roared with engines or bustled with crew. Now, it was a hotel and museum, but the echoes of its past still lingered in the empty corridors. The first-class lounge, once the heart of elegance, had been closed to visitors for the night. The chandeliers hung dark. The piano sat dust-covered in the corner, and the only sound was the slow creak of the old vessel rocking against the water. Evelyn, a young history student, had snuck inside after hours. She was writing a thesis on maritime legends, and the Queen Mary was the crown jewel of ghost stories. She carried only a small recorder and a flashlight. Her shoes clicked against the polished wood floor as she entered the lounge. The air was colder here, thick and heavy, as though she'd stepped into another time. She set the recorder on the bar, pressed the red button, and whispered, "Test 1. This is Evelyn Walker, documenting the haunted ballroom of the Queen Mary. They say the lady in white appears here. Let's see if she wants to say hello tonight." She tried to laugh, but her voice cracked in the silence. Evelyn paced slowly around the lounge, brushing her hand across the velvet chairs, peering into the massive mirrors that lined the walls. The place smelled faintly of salt and something older, like faded perfume. Then, without warning, a sound, a single piano note, clear, sharp, vibrating through the empty hall. Evelyn froze, her heart hammering. The piano sat 20 feet away, untouched, covered in dust. She forced herself to walk closer. Her flashlight beam caught the polished keys. They were still, silent. She raised the recorder and whispered, "Piano sound documented at 11:57 p.m. No visible cause." Another note rang out, this time lower. The sound seemed to come not from the piano, but from the air itself. And then she saw her. In the mirror at the far end of the lounge stood a woman, pale, elegant, draped in a flowing white gown that shimmered as though woven from mist. Her hair was curled in the fashion of the 1930s, pinned neatly beneath a jeweled clip. Her face was soft, sorrowful, her eyes endless shadows. Evelyn spun around. The room behind her was empty, but when she looked back at the mirror, the woman remained, swaying gently to the sound of music only she could hear. The piano began to play, faint ghostly notes forming the shape of a waltz. Evelyn's breath hitched. She whispered into her recorder, "Visual confirmation. Lady in white present." But her voice trailed off as the woman turned toward her. The figure did not walk. She drifted across the mirror's surface, across the ballroom floor, closer and closer. Evelyn gripped the recorder tightly, her body trembling. The ghost's lips parted. but there were no words, only the faint hum of a melody. Then the lady in white lifted her arms, as though offering a dance. Evelyn's hand trembled. She wanted to run, but her legs refused. The music grew louder, violins now joining the piano, filling the hall with a song from another century. And then she felt it, a cold, delicate hand sliding into hers. She gasped. No one was there, yet her fingers were clasped by something icy and fragile. Her body was pulled forward. She stumbled, but her feet began to move, not on her own will. The lady in white was leading her, guiding her in a slow. This is the terrifying story of the Phantom Waltz. Paranormal investigator Evelyn was exploring an abandoned ship when she stumbled upon its ballroom. It was here that she encountered the ghost of the lady in white, a spirit who haunts the room and compels men to dance with her. And when I say men, I mean specifically Evelyn. As she entered the ballroom, she saw the ghost of a woman in a white dress standing in the center of the room. And as the music began to play, the ghost beckoned for her to join her in a waltz. The mirrors on the walls reflected two figures dancing, but there was no one there except for Evelyn. As the music reached its peak, the chandeliers flickered and swayed, casting eerie shadows on the ballroom floor. But then, just as quickly as it started, the music stopped. Evelyn collapsed to the ground in a heap, her recorder rolling on the floor, capturing every sound of the otherworldly encounter. When security found her, they were met with a terrifying sight. The room was empty, but the recording was not. And that's why